it looks like Shedeur Sanders may be getting some action in this Netflix series, QB, as Joe Flacco will be one of the main people in it. And we know that a large part of Joe Flacco's storyline last season was Shedeur Sanders getting drafted into Cleveland and everything that came with that, him getting benched and traded. All of this stuff, the whole Kevin Stefanski debacle, we got to get into this. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated as well. Let's get right into things. This is courtesy of SB Nation Yahoo Sports. Okay, it says Cleveland Browns former QBs to be featured on a Netflix series. It says the Browns had one of the interesting seasons of quarterback play in 2025. The team cycled from veteran Joe Flacco as the starter for the first 4 games to a pair of overmatched, not ready for primetime rookies in Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, with the result being a 5-win season that was in every way imaginable as bad as it looked. Okay. Along the way, fans were left wondering what was going on behind the scenes, with such questions as why was Flacco fever not sweeping the town again? What future does Gabriel have in the league? Why exactly did people ever think Shedeur Sanders was more than a 5th-round talent? As luck would have it, some of those answers may be coming this summer when season 3 of the Netflix series Quarterback debuts on July 14th, with Joe Flacco being one of the 4 quarterbacks featured, along with Jaden Daniels, Cam Ward, and Baker Mayfield. Okay, so this is going to take fans behind the scenes into the Cleveland Browns facilities and all of that good stuff. And we're going to get some glimpses of what was actually going on with this QB competition. You remember there was supposed to be a competition during training camp that was exposed for being a fake competition. A bunch of nonsense that Kevin Stefanski was doing. And Shedeur Sanders is definitely going to be involved in this thing on Netflix. So we definitely have to look forward to that. Now, afternoon drive, they have spoke about some things in regards to the Browns, one being Myles Garrett, Taylor Green, and much more. Let's take a listen.
Albert Breer joining us one day ahead of the NFL schedule release. Yeah. Albert, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, guys, what's happening?
Not a whole lot, just waiting on this damn schedule. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm done fighting. Like, I just, everybody makes such a huge deal out of this. And, this is one thing that I don't really do a ton of reporting on until the actual schedule itself comes out. It doesn't get me fired up the way it gets other people fired up. But that's okay. To each his own.
So I actually think you're kind of on the right show for this, because we analyze stuff. And listen, it's been a slow offseason, so we'll take just about any bit of breaking news that you got.
Yep.
But I think you're in the correct thing on this. I think the most interesting thing is strength of schedule and how that plays out. So you might be the right guy to ask about this, because I think you probably care about this too. If you're a team going into an offseason or going into getting ready for the season, how much tangible difference do they see between having one of the 5 hardest schedules on paper and one of the 5 easiest schedules on paper?
Yeah, I've come around on this a little bit. Last year sort of was the one that got me, because if you go back 2 years, the Commanders had a really favorable draw, I'd say, and they wind up winning 12 games sort of out of nowhere, make it to the NFC title game. And, they wound up with, I think, a favorable playoff draw because of it and everything else. And then, coming back last year, I had, a little bit of an argument with one of the big radio hosts up here, Mike Felger, on where the Patriots' ceiling was. And I really felt like they weren't going to be much better than 10, 11 wins. And he said, well, look at the schedule. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the teams like the Panthers and all these teams here, those are their peers. And I just say this, it didn't take much for them to level up, and get to 14 wins. And then, the depth of the conference wasn't what we thought it was going to be. Joe Burrow gets hurt, Lamar Jackson gets hurt, Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. And the makeup of the conference was different than we thought it would be. The schedule was a layup for them, and they get to a Super Bowl. So I think it does matter, but we already know who the opponents are. The other thing about it is, with some of these teams that have the easier schedules that might be looking at a turnaround, I also think it's starting to make a difference in the amount of 1 o'clock Sunday games you have, just in that it allows you some more normalcy, where some of these other teams are getting thrown in a blender, and they're playing on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And, I know there's one team that everybody's going to see tomorrow that I believe is going to wind up playing on like 6 of the 7 days of the week, And so, the better a team you are, the more likely that sort of thing is to happen to you. And, if it does happen to you, then I think it's going to take a toll on your team. Whereas if you're playing on Sunday at 1 most weeks, there's going to be less wear and tear, especially when your schedule isn't as difficult. So that's sort of where I stand on that. I do think it can make a difference.
Yeah, and Albert, last year the Browns we had no primetime games, and I think everyone's trying to figure out how many we will have this year. There's a couple really interesting games potentially on the docket. A return game against Baker Mayfield is interesting. A game against Kevin Stefanski is interesting. But does it matter to you from like a broadcast perspective? Do you think it matters to them in scheduling this if it's Shedeur versus Deshaun, or is that really not going to come into play?
I sort of think they're both interesting. You know what I mean? Now how good they're going to be, we'll see, but they're both interesting, and I think they'll at least both be something to watch. They'll give you something to watch in a game that involves the Browns. And, just like looking at their opponents, could they be playing on a Thursday against the Bengals or the Ravens or, the Texans? I mean, the Falcons, like you said, there's the storyline there. Same as with the Panthers. I could see something like that happening for sure. So my guess is they wouldn't go 2 years in a row without another primetime game. My guess is they would probably shoehorn the Browns into one of those Thursday night slots, but we'll see what happens.
Albert, avid reader here. First time, long time. I did notice you called yourself intrigued by Taylon Green in Cleveland. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so I think this is more about kind of where the Browns are at with their coach, and I really think it's a fascinating thing when you look at the variety of quarterbacks that Todd Monken's worked with. And I know, that's sort of relatively well known, but until I really kind of went back through his history and saw all the different types of quarterbacks he's worked with, I mean, it's really interesting. You can go back to the first time he was in the league, and he worked with David Garrard in Jacksonville. He's a receivers coach, but he's on that side of the ball with him. Then you go to Oklahoma State, he's with Brandon Weeden. Then you go from Oklahoma State to Southern Miss. He was actually with Nick Mullins. You guys remember him?
Yeah.
There. Then Tampa, and in Tampa he was with Jameis Winston. In Cleveland, he's with Baker Mayfield. And then at Georgia, he won 2 national titles with Stetson Bennett, and then to Lamar Jackson the last couple of years, So I just think you look at that variety of quarterbacks, and it's this guy's got a lot of clubs in his bag as far as how to build an offense.